Awesome to welcome college basketball broadcaster Seth Greenberg to the Basketball Podcast. Prior to becoming an analyst for ESPN, Greenberg was a coach for 34 years, the last 22 as a head coach. Greenberg has been the head coach at Long Beach State, University of South Florida, and Virginia Tech. He was a two-time ACC Coach of the Year and has had a significant impact on the game of basketball. Coach Greenberg, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here.
Coach, so many places to go. I mean, incredible coaching career and now a great analyst and enjoyable to listen to you. And I'm just wondering, I mean, as a group, fans seems to be a little bit more educated. Players, certainly coaches, more educated because of technology. Do you find you can get a little bit more in depth with some of the technical, tactical knowledge that you share because of that on the broadcasts?
Yeah, at times. It all depends on what platform you're on. Obviously, if you're on a game and you actually see something, you can illustrate it, you can educate and inform. That's one thing. If you're on Sports Center at 7:30 in the morning, probably not so much because people are just waking up. They don't want to really know kind of inside and ropes type stuff. They want big picture stuff. You know, who's going to win by how many, who's playing well, why are they playing well, those type of things. So you try to strike a balance. It's no different than coaching. It's not what you know, it's what your players know and what they can go out and execute. And it's not what you know, it's what you can communicate to the fans that they can kind of break down and digest and enjoy. You know, part of it is entertainment. I mean, you know, you want to keep that audience and you want to kind of inform and entertain. And that's kind of your main focus, inform and entertain. Going deeper during the games, a little deeper during college game day, because the people that are watching those broadcasts are probably, more into the hows and whys of things.
Going back to our coaching careers, coached against you twice when you brought your teams to the University of Windsor there from Virginia Tech. A lot of fun. But I'm imagining at that point, just like myself, that you didn't imagine yourself necessarily doing this role. But did you always kind of align with the possibility of being this type of analyst?
Well, I was a broadcast journalism major in college, which means nothing, quite honestly, because I'm not sure I use any of that in terms of what I do on a daily basis. But it sounds good, if nothing else. You know, I thought at one time I would be eventually, do something that like I'm doing. I didn't expect it at that time, to be honest with you. I was excited about the team I had coming in. I had Montrezl Harrell coming in. I had Dorian Finney-Smith returning. I had Jarrell Eddy, who played in the NBA, Eric Green, who played in the NBA. I thought I was going to have a really good team. But there are certain things out of your control. So once I got let go, I had three daughters. One that was still in college, one that was about ready to go to college. So I thought maybe that this would be an avenue to pursue. Although, at the bottom, in my heart of hearts, I still perceive myself as just a coach talking ball.
Well, and I love that. And that's how you come across for sure. And that's why I think so many coaches align with listening to you. It's really enjoyable from that perspective. And, when you were coaching through your career, did you have some favorite analysts to listen to? For me, for example, Hubie Brown. Wouldn't want to miss a game that Hubie Brown was on. Was there any that stood out for you?
Yeah, Coach Brown, someone I kind of grew up with. I grew up in the five-star camp, and the first lecture I ever heard was from Coach Brown. The reason I probably wanted to get into coaching is listening to him and hearing him impact me and saying, "Wow, that would be a cool thing." And then I played for a really good high school coach named Irwin Stewart. He had a great impact on me. I played for the great Lal Lababo, who was Knight's assistant at Army, who was one of the architects of volume-man defense. And that's really the reason I went to Fairleigh Dickinson is because he was such a good tactician and a teacher. I thought, what can set yourself apart if I want to get into a career in coaching? So, yeah, I'd say Coach Brown is one. Jeff Van Gundy is one that, he doesn't pull punches, tells it like it is. I think some of those guys, quite honestly, the guys in the NBA are the most interesting to listen to because maybe I grew up with them.
One of the unique things about your position now is that you get access to coaches and practices and insights. Can you share some of the ideas that maybe you've learned, maybe some of the best ideas that you've learned that may help us as coaches?
Everyone's different. I mean, I think the first and foremost, you got to figure out a system that can put you in position to be the best team in your league, and then figure out a system that matches your team's personnel, and then figure out a system that matches your community, the players you're gonna get on a yearly basis if you're coaching in high school, that fits your community. I think that's a big thing. I think obviously in college you get a chance to kind of have the agility to change. Coaching is the essence of coaching to me is putting players in position to play to their strengths, building a system that fits your person, your personnel and your skill set, offensively and defensively. Coaching can't be like fashion. Fashion changes every year. I remember back in the day, Judd Heathcote wins with a 2-3 matchup zone. Everyone wanted to play 2-3 matchup zone. And Rick Pitino wins with, matchup press, and everyone thinks they're going to match up press and shoot threes. The NBA analytics tell us, threes, layups, and free throws. That sounds great. You don't have NBA players. So, if you getting a good shot in a high school or college is as good as anything you could do. So you got to shoot, 40% of your shots from threes. Not if you don't have good 3-point shooters. So, I think that a couple things, I get a chance to, go to the best practices in college basketball. This fall, I probably went to 25 practices. I go every game day. I sit and I watch both teams practice. I think that the most important part of coaching outside of the X's and O's is connecting with your team. I always say the hardest playing, toughest team finds a way to win. How do you become that hardest playing, toughest team? Those guys got to play for you. The best coaches are really good communicators. Now, I'm not saying that they're kissing anyone's rear end either. I'm saying that they connect with their players so they can coach them hard, but that their players have trust in them and believe in them and want to be coached hard because they know they can help them get somewhere they can't get themselves. So I think, the best coaches, what I've watched overall, is have real relationships with their players. It's not how you doing good, how you feeling good, how's your family good, how your class is going good. No, it's much deeper than that. They have a real connection, and that connection and care enables them to demand and set a standard and have core beliefs that players buy into. To me, the first thing, it starts with relationships and trust. Trust doesn't come with a title anymore. Trust is earned. When I played in high school, when I played in college, trust came with the title. Coach Lababo, he was our coach. We were going to trust him. Today, because of all the static that's around players, with all the different people that are pulling up from all different directions on players, trust has to be earned. And trust is hard to gain. It's easy to lose, and it's impossible to regain. And so your word's got to be your bond. But the best coaches have the trust of their teams, and that enables them to coach hard. The second thing is, I think the best coaches just throughout are really committed to teaching their guys what to do and why to do it, and then letting them play off of instinct, make plays out of plays, read, react. But again, it goes to the same thing. It's putting players in position to play their strength.
Do you see any challenges in coaches imitating what they see other coaches doing on TV?
I see right now the biggest problem in our game is everyone wants to play 4 and 5 out. Everyone wants to play quote unquote positionless. You don't have positionless players. Positionless basketball is not very good. So it's like everyone wants to play pick and roll basketball. If you don't have a guard that can drag two, pick and roll basketball is not very good. If you don't have a guard that can read the weak side tag, pick and roll basketball is not very good. If you don't have a guard that, if people drop coverage, can stick his defender on his rear end and then snake it back or put him in a spot, or you don't have a guy that can roll and catch above the rim, or at least make a play so that the weak side has to, shrink a little bit. So, I think what happens as coaches, we we watch these games on TV and we see these teams play and we want to play like them. And it sounds great. And it's obviously, we study it and we learn it, and then we run it. And because we don't have the players that fit that personnel, you're not effective, you're not efficient, and then the same thing defensively. I think coaches are not just creatures of habit, but information gatherers. Like, you have this spot, information gatherers. You can't do everything. It's almost like when we're doing TV, give them something to look for in a game. Well, you can't do everything. Well, I guard the ball screen 17 ways. That's great, but you don't guard it one way well. Don't make the game that difficult. And I think analysts do it. I think coaches do it. I did it to some extent. I would be a totally different coach offensively. Look, here's the deal. You have to understand you're going to have to make changes. You have to have agility as a coach. So, you might hard hedge or blitz ball screens. All right. So what's your secondary option? All right. You might switch. What's your third option? You might switch 1 through 4, whatever. You don't need a 4th and 5th option. It's like a low post player. He needs a move and a counter move. You can teach him 17,000 moves. All right. What's his go-to move? What's his counter? Where does he want to catch the ball? Does he want to catch it on the right block or the left block? Does he want to catch it up the lane or off the lane? Does he want to catch it on the move, or does he want to catch it off, for screen and a shape? That's your job as a coach. But like, I think at times we make things too difficult. I've talked to coaches, and I talked to, and I'm not going to mention his name, who he wanted we ran a lot of stuff off misdirection of Iverson and stagger action. We would take the stagger action, we twist out of it in terms of screen the screener out of it. We would stagger the staggers, and we would slip the second screener and lift up high quick the first screener. We did all kinds of stuff. I really need that because I need to get my player X to. No, you don't. You have 17,000 ways to get that guy to ball. What's the best two ways? You don't need a third way.
What do you think the best coaches are doing?
I think the best coaches keep their players with a free mind, teach them hows and whys and concepts, and then have things in place that put them in position offensively, defensively to play on instinct and play to their strengths. And it's really that simple. You don't need 17 ways to double the post. You double it off the pass, you double it big to big, you double it, off the weak side. Now, are you doubling it on the bounce? Great. If you're gonna double on the backside and then that's great. That means you're sweeping in front. Don't make it too difficult. One way and a counter way. And I think the best coaches are pretty much committed to that. And I know, look, the NBA, they make 3 changes in the middle of a game of the NBA. Those guys have PhDs in basketball. They prepare for 100 games a year. All right. Your players aren't brilliant. They're just learning how to play. So those are some of the things that, I've come across. I've been so impressed with a lot of coaches. I think the last thing would be is don't be afraid to coach your team. Like I see too many guys, they're going to transfer, those dudes ain't helping you win anyway. So coach your team. If players don't want to allow you to coach them, then they're not helping you win anyway. And if if you're worried about it, if you coach them hard, then you don't have a good relationship with them. So
I want to just highlight is something that you said near the beginning, and having attended so many practices, and even on this podcast, it shines through too, is what you referred to as relationships. Talk to us about those mini conversations, because I think that's what's underestimated. Mini conversations that you have with players are what build the relationship. And I think Hollywood and all these other places tend to portray it as one big speech, but it's all the mini conversations, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. It's the conversations away from your office. The office is an intimidating place. Some of my best conversations, I used to have a thing where I used to bring 2 or 3 players over the house for dinner preseason. And part of it was to let them see how I talk to my wife and treat my children and interact at dinner. The other part was just to go downstairs and BS. The other part was sometimes if a player was struggling, at the end of that, I'd have a highlight film of all his best plays and say, hey, this is who I think you are. I don't know who you think you are, but this is who I think you are. But yeah, taking a walk across campus is always great. And then the conversations that have nothing to do with basketball. Those are the very best. In terms of, what's going on in your life. Sit and listen and wait for an answer. And what's happening. Have you talked to this person or that person or this person? Getting them to open up and listening so that you can find out more about them. And the recruiting process is obviously available to you, but you really don't get to really know your players until you're with them 24/7, 7 days a week. And it's the conversations that actually don't include basketball enable you to have the conversations you do include basketball, because then they'll listen. So, those are important things. And, the best conversations are after they graduate, to be honest with you, hearing about their kids and their families and their adventures and where they're playing and the experience that they're having. But, it's those behind the scenes, one-on-one conversations enable you to coach your team.
And you mentioned the evolution of the game a little bit. You mentioned the NBA analytics and the kind of the filter down effect, but I'm curious, have you seen a difference in practices over, say, the last 10 years in terms of the evolution of a practice? Does it seem different? Does it seem the same? Because we know the rise of social media, we know the rise of different educational methods have somewhat influenced how people design and organize their practices. So I'm curious if you've seen much.
Yeah, I think practices in general, because you have so much access to your teams in college now. You have them in the summer, which should be skill and concept work and defensive principles, and then you have them in the preseason, which means more shooting, skill work, and starting to put in concepts. Here are things that I would do differently if I was coaching today. I'd go up and down much more, because I think you've got to play. If you're going to play out of flow, you're going to have to practice in flow. You can't stop it every 2 seconds. I'd spend so much more time in special situations, because I think in league play, where there's a more level playing field, those 5-point games are decided on underneath out of bounds, side out of bounds, first play of the half, last play of the half, short clock situations, free throw situations. You win those special teams plays, you're going to win your close games. So even in my mini scrimmages, I would start with the ball underneath out of bounds or side out of bounds or whatever, and I wouldn't put it in the end of practice. I'd put all that stuff in probably the middle third of practice, because everyone knows it's no different than a television show. Everyone knows you put your junk at the end. You know why we put our junk at the end? Is stuff we're not sure of, because we can always throw it out. We're having a great conversation on NIL. You know what? That last conversation's out because we went longer in this area. The players understand that too. They understand you have 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours, depending on your gym situation. And they know, all right, if we get down to special situations, dead ball inbound, side out of bounds, underneath out of bounds, you know what? We're close to the end of practice. You don't have your total attention. But if you put it in an area where they know that that's not going anywhere, because what's important to you is going to be important to them. So I would go more up and down. I'd basically structure my practice. The first hour of practice, I would do my concept, my skill work, my defensive fundamentals. I would do all my ODOs and 4-minute scrimmages in the next segment of practice. And so like even the first hour of practice, I'd be working on stuff defensively, including my defensive fundamentals that would tie into all my league games, especially preseason. And I might even call the sets or the actions or the concepts after teams that we're going to play, because that becomes easier when we get into getting ready to play league where we have short turnarounds. But then I think you have to go up and down. I just think, and I think, then like, especially this time of the year, then you can use your second practice to get in shooting, more special situations, more defensive, intricate in terms of walking through the conceptual, how to guard certain things that reviewing certain things that you're gonna do in that coming game, those coming games. But people are playing with more flow, so people are going up and down more, which is fine. And you can stop it. You can stop it, chart it, edit it, show it. And handle all those things, but you don't have to stop at every play. I was bad at that, because I'd see something. Now, the best I've ever seen at that was Larry Brown. I'd go to his practices when I was at Long Beach State, and he was at the Clippers. They'd go boop, 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 boop. They'd do 3 or 4 minutes. He'd see everything. His mind was like a computer. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And we always did shooting in pre-practice. I didn't count that as practice. My pre-practice was all skill and concept work. It was about 20 minutes. It was, I started practice after we stretched after pre-practice, when we lathered up a little bit and got it going. I think you've got to have a flow to practice. Quick in and out. You can't talk for a long time. Bill Self, the pace of their practices are very, very good. Danny Hurley, the pace of his practices are really good. And because the pace is good, the intensity never wavers. There are no long breaks. If they're long breaks, it's free throw shooting against the number, then boom, you're right back in it. It's 2 ends of the court, 2 baskets with high intensity coaching, coaches involved, and then you go from there. But I think the pace of your practice enables your guys to process stuff quickly. The pace of your practice that makes you guys understand and if you get alone in your practice, it's hard to unplug, plug back in, reboot.
curious, are you finding best practices now in terms of balancing coaching them hard and then still coaching them with respect? And what are some insights in terms of helping us understand how to do that better?
Yeah, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's no different than, I now, because of what I do, I go, I could disagree with Jay Billis, but it's how you disagree with someone. You can be demanding without being demeaning, but you can't be afraid to coach your guys hard. Like, this has got to be a standard. There's got to be core beliefs and non-negotiables. Playing hard is non-negotiable. Being unselfish is non-negotiable. All right. Whatever your non-negotiables are, you've got to hold your team accountable for. And like, you can't. It's like parenting. No means no. So if you're going to say, and I know Rick Barnes does a great job of sending the guys to the verse max or to the ropes or whatever, there's got to be a consequence. Hugs used to have the treadmill flying, right? Boom, go to the treadmill. You're on there for 20 seconds. There's got to be a message, so that's the way you don't say anything. I joked, I was at SEC Media Day, and I said, I asked Santiago Vescovi, give me your best Coach Barnes story. And he just said, go, just go, which means basically just go to the verse max, go. Just go. And I mean, there's got to be a consequence, but it's not what you say, it's how you say it. But I mean, you've got to be like a head coach, Kelvin Sampson says, I totally believe it. Head coach, and forget about the head coach. Coach staff could never have bad practice. Like I get a kick out of a guy, oh man, I'm so tired. Well, you're tired. Well, how's your team going to be? If you walk in because you lost the game the day before, and as a young coach, I did this, it was bad. I was so consumed by what happened the day before, I never gave my team my best day because I was in the past. I wasn't ready to move on. As I became an older coach, after we did film, I would literally erase the grease board and say, clean slate, let's go. Let's have a great day. And I think you got to find a way to get to the next play. You tell your players all the time to get to the next play. As a coach, you got to get to the next play. All right. But you can be demanding, but your choice of words has got to be, it could be as plain and simple as like, that's unacceptable. That doesn't fulfill the standard of what our program is all about. We're not going to be who we want to be if that's the effort you're going to get. All right. And then there's got to be a consequence. So therefore, Vertimax, go. See you.
In general, it's better for us and it's better for our players to coach with much more respect and much more, positivity in that light, right?
Yeah, of course. So respect is a two-way street, though. They got to respect the game. They got to respect their teammates. The biggest thing, if you don't have it, you better have a hell of a locker room because you're only as good as your locker room. Like when I talk to these businesses, I joke around. I say, when we're done, you're all going to go to the bathroom. And then we'll find out how good this talk was. I mean, like when those guys go in the locker room, who's your voice? You have the wrong voice in the locker room. You are absolutely screwed.
And did you spend time developing that as a head coach? Developing that locker room? Yeah.
Or developing a leader.
Yeah.
You have to know who your voice is. And the years that we weren't good, we didn't have a good voice in the locker room. And that guy's got to have the balls to come into the locker room and say, Coach is right. We got to practice on it. We covered that in the scouting report. And then we gave up 2 points on that underneath that bounce play. Coach is right. Like, we're going to cover that. And he's going to show us exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do and why they're going to do it. Then we've got to be able to take that away. Because, I mean, it really, in the end, coaching is defensively is what you're going to give and what you're going to take away. And like, if you're going to spend time on certain things, then you got to be good at the things you spend time on. So, yeah, you've got to be very aware. And that's where I think assistant coaches help. That's where those individual meetings help. That's where your messaging's got to be consistent, like your film sessions after a tough loss. I tell people all the time, biggest mistake I ever made was my last year at Virginia Tech. One, I didn't spend enough time in special situations because I started 4 freshmen and was so concerned about just getting them to compete and play hard that I didn't invest enough time in the end of games. Now, we might not have gotten to those end of games because we did compete and play hard, but we just could close them. And then we lost at Wake Forest, our first ACC game, in a noontime game where we had a couple of players were complaining that we were the first game of the ACC season on a Saturday at noon. And I had only one upperclassman that year, and that upperclassman was in the locker room whining and complaining about having to play a 12 o'clock game. We don't play 12 o'clock games. What's this? And he started with 4 freshmen. And I ended up suspended him for a couple of games after that. And I probably was too harsh on that, but it was really important for me to get those freshmen to know, what was expected of them. But, I think it's one of those lessons. If I had that to pull back, I probably would have had more of an individual meeting with him and explained to him and given him another chance. But when you only have, we only had 3 upperclassmen, I put a lot on his plate. And, just that given time, he let that's the locker room. He let the locker room down.
So meeting with players is important. Can you share more about your philosophy behind meetings?
I probably overmet with my team, if anything. I was big on, one-on-ones. But yeah, I would just I was big on who are we and how do we win. All right. So in getting those leaders to understand who are we and how do we win, we want to be the hardest playing, toughest team. We want to be a team that, takes care of the ball. We want to be a team that is physical, what all the things that we want to be. I mean, so that if we didn't fulfill those core beliefs, if we didn't fulfill the identity, I think identity is immediate. You don't have to be a great team to have an identity. Culture takes time. Right? Culture is you have to invest in it. Identity should be, if you have, the right team and you teach it well, you should be that hopefully right from the beginning. Now, it could change because, you have to have agility. I think one thing coaches don't do a good enough job is got to have agility. You don't throw everything out. I talked to a good friend of mine who's a hockey coach, and he has a young team right now, and he's had tremendous success. And he's trying to figure out what he was doing with his older team, he couldn't do with his new team. And we had this conversation on if I panic and throw everything out, then all of a sudden self-doubt creeps in. So I said, all right, what are the 2 things you have to do to make the game easier for these new guys? You don't have to change the whole thing. What's the 1 or 2 things you have to do? And so you got, as a coach, you got to have agility, but the conversations with your leadership group, your players, they've got to believe in you. They've got to believe in the system, and they can't be afraid to hold each other. Now, the best teams have a team of leaders. You know what I mean? The very best teams, it's not on the plate of 1 guy or 2 guys. It's guys usually that are invested in the program that all can say, hey, when we do X, Y, and Z, we win. We didn't do X, Y, and Z. Coach is right. And you know what? When we're at our very best, this is what we look like. I used to always say, what do we look like when we're at our very best? All right. So if we're not looking like we are at our very best, then you are your habits. So it starts in practice. I mean, it's I speak to a lot of teams when I go visit them. And, I think you're all your habits. So if you are your habits and then you have crappy practices, you're going to have a crappy game. Is good, leading up to it. But if you are your habits, if your habits are good, and you just so happen you miss shots or other team made shots or whatever, I can live with that. But if you go into a game and you lose your habits, and lose your habits means someone gets selfish. That's not part of who we are. Someone takes a play off. Someone doesn't close out the manner in which we have. Someone's not, communicating. Someone's not really locked into the scouting report. That's going to cost you game. So, having someone as your leadership group say, hey, they walk in that locker room, coach, right, here's why we lost the game. We weren't our habits. And, hey, whomever it is, Joey, let me tell you something. You're better than that. We need you better than that. And, we're counting on you. You let us down. I mean, it's no different than having a good leader of a guy's, I think the best teammates are the guys, if a guy gets off track, he isn't afraid to grab a guy and bring him on track. And I mean, whether it's off the court or on the court, where the guy's not going to class, grab his ass and get him to class. Because, that's in the end, that's going to affect all of us. So, but right now, college athletics has a whole new problem because in that locker room, you have NIL.
Mm-hmm.
And
let's get into that
an obstacle in
bit.
itself.
Yeah. That's a different conversation we'll have a little bit later, if you don't mind. But you mentioned before, like in terms of deciding what systems to use or what to do as a coach, the best teams in your league should help dictate that because you want to beat them, and then obviously play to your strengths. But you also mentioned NBA analytics and different types of trends. Is it really hard for a coach to be able to resist trends nowadays, especially in the college game as it relates to recruiting and what different players might think they want?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but then again, I did a Virginia game the other day. Everyone kills Tony Bennett on the system, yet his guys go into the league and play great.
And they win.
So and they win, and they go to winning teams. And they help teams win. So yeah, I mean, everyone wants to be positionless. That sounds great. And what I tell you? I say, you know what? The league is might be positionless, but the league is a league of role players. So who are you and how do you win individually? Every time I sent my guys to Portsmouth or to work out for NBA teams, I'd say make sure you show them what you can do, not what you can't do. And I think so. I would answer that by saying, college basketball. You know what? Yeah, you're trying to develop players, and you can develop players every single day in practice. But in the end, you're trying to win games.
Absolutely.
And winning games is about putting guys in position to play their strengths. And winning games is players giving up a little bit of their ego to help the group, the team win. So I would say, you know what? We're going to spend a ton of time helping you develop individually. But when that light goes on, all right, and our system's in place, all right, you're going to show people what you can do, not what you can't do. And you earn the right to shoot 3-point shots. You want to show people shoot 3-point shots, you're a 20% 3-point shooter. And here's the documentation, because we'll chart every single shot in practice. We'll chart every single drill. Here's the fact. Oh, your mom called. Well, first of all, I don't talk to parents about X's and O's, academics, socially, anything else like that. Because if you talk to parents about someone's role, then someone else's child's going to come in a conversation. That's just not fair, because that parent is there to defend their child. So, but yeah, I look, we worked a ton of time on player development, skill work. But in the end, when the ball goes up for a game, it's about how can we put ourselves in position to be successful. And the best way we can is for everyone to embrace their role. No differently than what every NBA team does. See, because the league's a league of role players. I got Dorian Finney-Smith. He just signed a gazillion-dollar contract because he moves the ball, he defends, he rebounds, and he's a great teammate. I had Brian Russell stay in the league 12 years. I had Lisa Sarah stay in the league 12 years. All right, they fit roles. I had Malcolm Delaney play in the NBA and make a ton of money in Europe. Deron Washington make a ton of money in Europe. It really comes down to, we're here to win games. We're here to develop young people. We're here to make sure that they have a chance to get a degree and earn their degree, so that we can help them build a bridge to cross when they're done playing, win games, and then develop them as people and as players. But in the end, I don't think you should play positionless basketball if you don't have positionless players. I don't care what the analytics say, because the guys that play in the NBA, that's the most exclusive club in the world. And I know everyone says, oh no, well, you know what? What does your team tell you? And how, what's the best way? The funny thing is, I played position. I played with 2 point guards, Malcolm Delaney, Eric Green, Xavier Dowdell, Jamon Gordon, forever, because I didn't want to turn the ball over. So I called them ball guards. They could play, make, and score. I played with 2, 6, 7 wing guys that were interchangeable. I didn't know I was being positionless. Those are the guys I could recruit. And I played with, one big guy that could play off, post-ups, penetration. And my best players took 2/3 of the shots. Because the other guys, you'll get shots because those 2 guys are so good. They'll get you shots. Be ready. And we're going to develop all of you. But I think that's the problem. Everyone gets so caught up in the fashion of sport instead of, people want winning players. PJ Tucker, look what he scored in college. Look at the Kentucky's national championship team. Look at it's like winning players. I mean, if you look around the country and you see guys step up and have great NBA careers because they fit a role. And so if they can fit a role there, why wouldn't you want them to fit a role in your team?
It's great. And obviously this all applies to high school coaches as well
Oh,
in terms of that,
100%.
because their challenges are even more, aren't they?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Coach your team, put your guys in position to play their strengths, develop relationships with them, get them to play hard, get them to like each other, get them to trust the hows and whys of what you're doing. Have fun with it, but also have a standard. And the standard is a standard. I mean, that's just, well, the day you give into the standard is the day you don't have a standard.
Absolutely. And Coach, you've been in the game for 30 plus years in different roles. And in analyzing the modern version of college basketball in 2022, what are some things that really stand out to you that you really enjoy about the modern game in 2022?
The kids are great. Majority of the young people that play are, they're really, really nice young men. They're more worldly. They've been all over the place playing. They've played with different groups. They obviously have greater relationships with each other through social media and through everything that surrounds the world today. So I mean, to me, the quality of young person playing is great. The negatives are that everyone thinks the road to the NBA is a rite of passage as opposed to being part of the most exclusive club. And they lose track of the most important thing is using basketball as a vehicle to build a bridge, to gain an education, to have a life. Great, you can go to Europe. And go, oh, you can just go to Europe. The problem is money in Europe's dried up. My brother's coached in Europe for 20 years. I mean, it's not the money it was. And you know what? If you're not good in Europe, you don't help your team win, you get sent home without a check. Like a big concern I have is we've got this NIL going on, and you've got guys making $400,000 in NIL. And when that's over with, because that name on the front of the jersey is no longer part of it, because NIL is pay for play now anyway, then they're going over to Europe for $60,000. But those checks every month are a little different than the $400,000 a year, right? And I really worry about that. One, do you have your degree? And number two, the mental health aspect. We talk about mental health all the time, but we never talk about it in relation to NIL. And that rude awakening of going from point A to the G League, even the two-way, or to Europe for $70,000, and then you come back, and where do you go from there? Because you didn't take care of the money that you made here. That's one of my concerns about the unrealistic environment that we create through NIL. Because again, it's not NIL. What we should do is have 2-year contracts. Get a 2-year contract to control the transfer portal. 2-year contracts. You're still going to keep the players around that aren't we saw all these big guys come back this past year, which was great because they saw there wasn't a path. I mean, if I was Oscar Sheba, I'd come back again next year. That's just me. But he's making real NIL. All right, he can sell anything. But we see these big guys come back. Haven't seen as many wings. Kendrick Davis, probably the one guy that jumps out, the point guard at Memphis. He came back. He probably would have been a second-round draft choice, maybe, or a two-way dude. There's some other guys like that. But, I think
just on that two-way
contract.
Just on that two-way contract, Coach, does that apply to the whole roster? Because we also know one of the other problems is certain coaches sometimes want to get rid of players. So it's not just about the players staying. It's about now, does that 2-year contract apply to whoever you sign? They stay there for 2 years.
That whole thing about people running players out is the most overrated narrative in coaching. That's a BS. I mean, very few guys run dudes out. I mean, guys don't even use all 13 scholarships now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't keep 13 guys happy. I mean, look at John Sharp. He's got 10 guys, 10 good players. He's doing a really good job. Hard to keep those 10 dudes happy because all 10 of them have unrealistic expectation on, how easy it is to get to the next level. So, I mean, and they're all nice kids. I mean, really nice kids, but they still have and everyone around them, the static around them. You're going to see a record number of young people go home for winter break and not come back and transfer. I really believe that. You look what's happening in football right now. But yeah, the 2-way contract to me gets the transfer portal under control. Like, name me a sport, soccer, baseball, NBA, NFL, that has free agency year to year, where every single person is a free agent. Eventually, we're going to lose our affiliation because, I mean, people, I mean, like, and I understand supply and demand and, value and all that. I have no problem with people making money off name, image, likeness. But we've got to find a way to, you also have to learn how, not to just run from issues, and you got to allow yourself to grow and mature and then understand things are not as easy as they look. Like, every high school kid watches TV and thinks college basketball is easy, and then they get there and it's like, whoa. And this is not EYBL. This is not the gauntlet. This is game planning and taking away what you do well and playing with other good players and feeling how to digest the scouting report and traveling and school and weight room. And I mean, there's just a lot to it. And, but I think if we had contracts, and again, there's a lot to figuring that out because collective bargaining and things like that. I just think we've got to find a way to get the portal under control, as much for the young people as it is for the schools. I mean, are we going to have guys not graduating? More people are not graduating. We got all these leagues, overtime elite, NBA academies, and all those things sound great, except those kids go there instead of going to college. And then when they don't make it, because chances of making them probably aren't great, to be honest with you, because everyone thinks they're going to be in the league, where do they go back to? Yeah, if they go to college for 1 year, they got a place to go back to. Where do those kids go back to? Are we going to have a generation of kids that at the end of those 4 or 5 years, if they don't make it, aren't part of anything? Where's their support system? See, I look at this thing as a bigger picture of, we've lost track of the value of education. We've lost track of really helping mentor and build bridges for these young people to grow, develop for the next 40 or 50 years of their lives. We're so locked into the 0.05% that might have a chance that we've lost, because everyone thinks they're in that percentage, that we lost track of the 99% that end up making bad decisions. Like, we look in football, see the number of football kids that put their name in the portal and never ended up having a scholarship coming out of it. I mean, think about the number of those kids that threw away an education. I mean, so I just look at it as a more global issue of, we have to still get back to the idea of educating and helping these young people be employable at the end of their college experience. And maybe that's too Pollyanna. Maybe that's, people say, oh, you don't get it, you're an old man. No, I want to see young people be successful.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I hope we all agree that, like, we want young people to have the best possible experience so that they can become the best version of themselves beyond college. Yeah. And that's a no-brainer. So transfer portal, NIL, now they're feeding each other. Are there any other aspects of college basketball that maybe frustrate you that we should look at, trying to push for change?
I think we should have summer basketball. I think, those 8 weeks, John Calipari and I talk about this all the time. We have those 8 weeks where you allowed your players. I think anytime within that 8 weeks, you should be able to play 2 games. And maybe let your assistant coaches coach them. Use it for NIL. Play the games, get an outside group to produce the games. Kind of like when we went to Windsor. Boom, we could have used it, for NIL. Negotiate it, get a piece of it, do a clinic, do a reading program, do do something that now you can raise money so that all those players can make some money. But you have those 8 weeks. So I'm not asking for more than 8 weeks. All I'm asking is, 1 week and get 4 teams together. You play 2 doubleheaders. You play on Thursday, Saturday. You play on Friday, Sunday, whatever you want to do. Or you can play back-to-back days. You find a location. I'm sure some streaming service will pay for it. You put it in a venue that has 3,000 seats that people want to see it. You promote it. You see how successful the TBT's been. You see how successful the NBA Summer League is. We've got to find a way to make our sport a 12-month sport, like football is. We can't. People say, "Well, you shouldn't start the season until after the football season." No, what we need is promote our sport. Just because people are watching college football and the NFL doesn't mean we can't still promote basketball. So, I mean, starting of the season, like, oh, get rid of Feast Week. Oh, you've got great matchups in Feast Week. Well, promote them. We need to promote them. We need to embrace these great matchups. I mean, like, we have great games, all year. So I'd like to see that happen. I do think we're going to end up with 5 or 6 or 7 leagues. And everyone's going to have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, but I think it's going to be impacted. I think the automatic bids group of those teams those leagues will have a playoff, and the 8 winners will end up moving into the NCAA tournament bracket. They'll be in the tournament, but they'll play in the playing games to get to the bracket, because when you have leagues that have 20 and 25 teams in them and 2 divisions, you're going to have more teams that are going to go to the tournament from those leagues. But summer basketball, I think, is really something that's worthwhile. Kind of our version of a spring game, maybe. I think that would be really, really good.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I've heard a lot of college coaches talk to me about how difficult it is in the summer to build, individual development, team development, and then have nothing at the end of it. So to me, that makes sense in terms of what you're saying, and what that becomes, I don't know. I'm also curious, just from your perspective, do you think basketball across the world should have a uniform set of rules? Again, moving more towards FIBA possibly in the college game, or is it okay to have this separate identity?
I wouldn't mind seeing that. I mean, I don't think we should, most of my guys disagree with me. I don't think we should go to a 24-second clock in college basketball. Yeah, I don't think our players are good enough, to be honest with you. And like I look at my Virginia Tech teams, we don't beat Duke and Carolina a bunch of times, and Maryland when they were great, and win at Kansas if we're playing NBA rules. But we could find some ways to muddy the game up and win, because we can impose our identity on the game. It goes back to build a system that gives you a chance to be the best teams in your league. Everyone doesn't have to play the same way. That's the problem. Is everyone tries to play the same way now. I mean, the teams that are winning right now, Purdue don't play like everyone else. Kansas don't play like everyone else. They actually move the ball, move people, set some ball screens, but not as many as that people. Connecticut doesn't play like everyone else. It's amazing, the teams that move the ball, move people, and don't get basically held hostage to, playing ball screen motion or false motion to a spread middle ball screen that everyone knows is coming in a short clock. Like look at Virginia, they continue to run their offense to the end of the possession, and they still find a way to get a good shot instead of backing it out the last 10 seconds and restarting their offense. So imagine how with a 24-second clock, how that would be for us. Now, obviously, people would play a little faster. FIBA rules would be interesting. I like the idea of widening the lane. I think the clock would be fine. I'd like to see us advance the ball to the last 2 minutes of the game to like the NBA does. I do think that would create more interesting and exciting ends. We saw what Hubert Davis did the other day, like throwing at the half court, then ducking in on the weak side Pete Nance for that skip over the top, and that we'd have more of those. I think that would be fun.
I agree. Advancing the ball under 2 minutes would add so much more entertainment to the game. It just makes it so much more interesting.
Hey, and I think we should mess around preseason with the Elam ending.
Okay, I was going to ask you about the Elam ending. Yeah.
I mean, just let's look at it. I mean, college basketball, let's look at it. What it does is the end of the game, people don't understand it's a target score. We got to figure it out how it computes the college game. But so with 4 minutes left in the game, the leading team gets a target score, number they have to get to. The other team that's trailing, so they're trailing by 10 points, it's the target score plus 10 points. What it does is at the end of the game, instead of fouling, you got to get good possessions defensively and get a good shot. And offensively, you got to decide, you want to go right at it and shoot a bunch of threes, or do you want to attack, get downhill? Because, you get in a bonus at the end of that. It's one free throw in the ball. So you want to be aggressive. There's a lot of coaching that goes into it. It's fun. I've been part of it with the TBT for 3-4 years. The end of the games are really, really interesting. That puts a lot of pressure on the game, puts a lot of pressure on the officials. So I think that would be an interesting thing just to look at maybe in our feast week games.
I
NIT,
love it. Coach,
pretty,
CBL, the Canadian League's been doing it. The G League experimented with it this year, I think, for the first time in their showcase. I love it because it creates interest and intrigue at the end of all games, basically, doesn't it?
yeah, it really does. It really does, and a lot of strategy. And a lot of strategy. Like, when do you get the timeout? You got the lead. You get the ball. You get the timeout, because now all of a sudden you got the lead and the ball. So that's, say if 7 points was your target score. You could make it really, if you run a great play, it could be a 5-point game. Before the other team gets the ball. So there's a lot of fun things to it, and you got to probably study some data, but I think that's important. I think college ball should go to quarters. I mean, I don't know why we're held to playing two halves. I mean, just go to quarters. Make it easier for TV. I think it would make the free throw situation might be enhanced by it, by not shooting as many free throws, being in the bonus forever. I think it would really help.
That's big time, Coach. I mean, that was the biggest advantage of FIBA rules, is that obviously you eliminate the bonus, type of situation. Every quarter, it's wipe clean and start over, and nobody wants to watch a ton of free throws, do we?
No, for sure. Especially my teams, I couldn't shoot them. But
well, that's a different thing.
But I just think we've got to try it. And Tad Boyle, I know he's a dear friend who's on the rules committee, and I actually said that. I can do one or two things. I advancing the ball, and he said, "Well, it's a rule that gives the offense too much of an advantage." Hell, every rule we make gives the offensive advantage. Freedom of movement is giving the offensive advantage. Protecting the shooters gives the offensive advantage. I mean, every rule made is good. So I mean, but it's the same for both teams. Both teams can advance it, so it's a difference. So it's the same for both teams, and I just think we've got to continue to understand that entertainment is part of it.
I was just going to say that entertainment's part of it. So definitely, like, to enhance the end of game situation and to give teams a chance, or to just create more exciting situations at the end of the game, is always a positive in that sense. And I would love to see all those changes. And, and again, even the 24-second clock is about creating more offensive possessions. What is your feeling on shot clocks then at the high school level?
I would not like to see a 24-second clock for sure in high school. I think 30-second clock would be great in high school. I think that'd be good. It would teach guys to process and think and play on the run, which I think is a good thing. I think that would be a good decision. 24-second clock, I think, would be a little much. It'd be such an advantage for a more talented team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We more talented teams probably going to win anyway. It's almost like we always talk about recruiting. We make these things and say, they legislate rules and say, well, it's got to be equal to everyone. Well, nothing's equal to everyone. I was Virginia Tech. I was in the ACC. I can tell you, we didn't travel like Duke. We didn't fly in the planes that Duke flew in. I mean, I didn't travel in private planes to go recruiting. I mean, you can't legislate a level playing field. You just can't.
Coach, this has been an amazing conversation. I mean, your passion shines through, and I know you love the game, and just appreciate all you do for basketball and for basketball coaches specifically.
Yeah, look, I love the game. I love everything about our game, and we got to continue to understand it's for these young people, and we've got to pass on our love and our passion for the game, and also help them, prioritize the things that are most important. And that's the thing that hurts me, is that I don't perceive myself as an educator. I surely don't perceive myself as a journalist, but I perceive myself as someone that really cares about young people. And we've got to continue to help build bridges for these young guys and educate them on the value of education. And so that they can cross a bridge, because when they cross that bridge, they're not just bringing themselves over that bridge, you're bringing probably their families, their future families along with them. So I think this is a great platform to share ideas, and it's a great game, and we've just got to continue to get people involved in our game that first and foremost care about the young people that play it, even if that means being unpopular by saying some things that they don't want to hear, because it's just like parenting. You tell your kids the stove's hot. Why do you tell your kids the stove's hot? Because you love them. And sometimes we can't be afraid to tell the young people, just, hey, the reason we're doing what we're doing, why we're emphasizing what we're emphasizing, is because it's not just today. It's the future that we want to see you cross that bridge and be as successful as you can be in life.